Tonight, at some point before you fall asleep, a thought is going to arrive that you didn't invite. It will come in the quiet, in the dark, in the space between being awake and not. The thought that one day you will not be here, that everything you are, every memory, every person you love, every version of yourself you have ever been, will at some point simply stop. And for a few seconds, the ceiling will feel very far away and the darkness will feel very large. Then you shake it off. Roll over. Think about something else. The ancient Egyptians felt that exact same thing. Every pharaoh in his palace, every farmer in his field, every scribe hunched over papyrus in the lamplight, they all lay awake with the same thought. The difference is what they did about it. They did not accept it. They did not make peace with it. They declared war on it. And for 3,000 years, they built the most elaborate, most expensive, most desperately serious answer to death that any civilization in human history has ever produced. And the answer was nothing like what you think it was. Forget everything you think you know. Forget mummies as simply preserved bodies. Forget the afterlife as a peaceful, golden place where good people go. Underneath all of that is something stranger, darker, and far more interesting. A system so specific it makes modern concepts of heaven and hell look like rough drafts. Because the Egyptians did not fear death itself, they feared something that could happen after it, something they called the second death. Not punishment, not suffering. Permanent, total, irreversible non-existence. Simply ceasing to be. In any form. Forever. And everything they ever built was designed to prevent exactly that. So what happened the moment you died? According to Egyptian belief, your existence immediately became complicated. Because you were not one thing. You were 5 things. 5 separate aspects of self, each distinct, each essential. Each suddenly navigating a reality completely different from the one they had inhabited while you were alive. Lose any one of them, and the entire system collapsed. This is the part most people have never heard, and it changes everything about how you understand what the Egyptians were actually afraid of. The Ka was your life force, the energy that animated you while alive. When you died, it separated from the body, but remained bound to it. Without access to that physical form, the Ka had nowhere to anchor itself. It would wander, weaken, and eventually dissolve into nothing. This is the actual reason the Egyptians mummified their dead. Not out of respect for the body, not as a cultural tradition, because the Ka needed the physical form to survive. Destroy the body, and you destroyed the Ka. Mummification was not about preserving a corpse. It was about keeping a soul alive. It was the most important technology ancient Egypt ever developed, more important than the pyramids, more important than any engineering achievement, because it was the foundation everything else depended on. The Ba was your personality, your individual character, the specific combination of qualities that made you distinctly you rather than anyone else. In Egyptian art, the Ba is depicted as a human-headed bird, because after death, the Ba had the ability to move freely between the world of the living and the world of the dead. During the day, it could leave the tomb, visit places the person had loved in life, be present among the living. At night, it had to return to the body. Always return to the body. If it could not find it, if the body had been destroyed or moved or made unrecognizable, the Ba was lost. And a lost Ba was another step toward the ending they feared most. The Ib was the heart, not just the physical organ, but the seat of every thought, every feeling, every decision you had ever made, every secret, every cruelty, every kindness, every moment where you chose something small and selfish when you could have chosen otherwise. The Ib carried all of it. And after death, the Ib was going to be examined, very carefully, by people who already knew everything that was in it, and then there was the Ren, your name. This is the one that leads to the most important and most disturbing part of the entire system. The Ren was not just what people called you, it was a fundamental component of your existence. As long as your name was spoken, as long as it was written somewhere that could be read, you continued to exist. Your name was your anchor in reality. And if your name was erased, if every inscription was chiseled away, every document destroyed, every person who had ever known you died without passing the name on, the Ren was gone. And without it, the last thread connecting you to existence was cut. This was the second death. This is what the Egyptians feared more than anything. This is why pharaohs carved their names into everything. Into granite walls, into temple columns, into places so deep inside structures that no human eye would ever see them again. It was not vanity. It was survival. Every cartouche, every hieroglyph spelling out a royal name was an act of existential self-defense. And this is also why the worst thing you could do to an enemy in ancient Egypt was not kill them. It was erase them. Chiseling a name off a wall was not vandalism. It was murder of someone who was already dead. You were killing them a second time, permanently, in the only way that actually counted. Pharaohs who fell out of favor, rulers whose legacies became inconvenient, had their names systematically removed from every surface in the kingdom. Not as a historical revision, as an execution. Now let's talk about what happened between dying and whatever came next. The Egyptian underworld was called the Duat, and navigating it successfully required knowledge, preparation, and the right spells. The Duat was filled with gates, each guarded by a deity who demanded a specific password before allowing passage. Say the wrong thing and you did not pass. This is why wealthy Egyptians were buried with texts containing the correct answers, literally a script for the most important performance of their existence. The poor were buried with simpler versions, or nothing at all, which tells you something uncomfortable about how the Egyptians understood fairness. The afterlife was not equal. It never was. At the end of the Duat, if you survived the gates, if you remembered the passwords, if nothing in the journey had consumed you, you arrived at the Hall of Two Truths. And here is where the most dramatic moment in Egyptian religion took place. The moment the entire system had been building toward. You stood before 42 judges. Divine being, each responsible for a specific category of wrongdoing. And you were required to make the negative confession. A declaration of everything you had not done. I have not stolen. I have not killed. I have not lied. I have not caused anyone to weep. I have not acted with anger toward any person. 42 declarations, one for each judge. Not confessing your sins, declaring your innocence, making a positive claim about the person you had been. And then that claim was tested in the most visceral way imaginable. Your heart was removed, placed on one side of a golden scale, and on the other side was placed a single white feather, the feather of Maat, the goddess of truth, justice, and cosmic order. The feather that represented the weight of a life lived in balance with the universe. If your heart and the feather balanced perfectly, you passed. If your heart was heavier, weighted by a lifetime of choices, you failed. And waiting beside the scale was Ammit, part lion, part hippopotamus, part crocodile. The three most dangerous animals in ancient Egypt fused into a single creature whose only purpose was to eat the hearts of those who failed the judgment. If Ammit ate your heart, you were gone. Not condemned to suffering, not sent somewhere terrible. Simply gone. The second death, the permanent erasure, the ending the Egyptians had spent their entire lives and enormous fortunes trying to avoid. But if your heart balanced, if the feather and your life were equal in weight, you were led into what awaited on the other side. And what awaited was not what you would expect. The Egyptian paradise was called the Field of Reeds, and it looked exactly like Egypt. Not a transcendent golden realm, not clouds and light and escape from the physical world into something beyond it. A perfect replica of the Nile Valley. The same river, the same fields of grain, the same blue sky, the same daily rhythms of planting and harvest and flood. The Egyptians did not want to leave their world behind. They wanted to live in it forever. These were people who loved their lives enough to want them to continue unchanged for eternity. There is something in that which is either deeply beautiful or deeply heartbreaking depending on how you look at it. But here is the detail nobody puts in the documentaries. You had to work there. The Field of Reeds was not a place of rest. Farming, building, the same physical labor that occupied your living days occupied your eternal ones. For ordinary Egyptians, this was probably not a particular problem. But for the wealthy, for the elite, for the people who had spent their lives being served rather than serving, the prospect of eternal agricultural labor was deeply unappealing. So they solved it the way they solved most problems. With money. Shabtis. Small figurines, usually made of faience or wood or stone, buried with the dead in numbers reaching into the hundreds, one for every day of the year plus overseers to manage them. Each one inscribed with a spell that would animate it in the afterlife whenever its owner was called to perform labor. The Shabti would answer instead, "Here I am. I will do it." And the wealthy Egyptian would continue existing in the Field of Reeds in precisely the style to which they were accustomed. Attended, comfortable, free from work, in eternity exactly as they had been in life. The class system did not end at death in Egyptian belief. It continued forever. The rich hired servants to labor for them through eternity. And the Egyptians saw nothing troubling about this. It was simply the natural order, extended. But even the field of reeds was not safe. Even paradise could be undone. Because nothing was permanent. Nothing was guaranteed to last. If your body was destroyed, if your name was erased, if no living person remembered you, the second death waited, patient and absolute. Even after everything had been navigated successfully, the threat never fully disappeared. They built the pyramids. They carved names into granite that would last millennia. They developed the most sophisticated preservation technology the ancient world ever produced. They created an entire religious and bureaucratic system dedicated to a single purpose. And underneath all of it was the knowledge that none of it might be enough, that the second death was always there, that the only thing standing between you and permanent erasure was your name existing somewhere in the world, and a body that time and disaster and human malice were always working to destroy. They built everything they built because they were afraid. The same fear you feel in the dark before sleep, the same thought you didn't invite, the same ceiling feeling very far away. Tonight the thought will come again. The uninvited one. And you will do what you always do. Roll over. Think about something else. Keep going. The Egyptians kept going too. For 3,000 years. Writing names into stone as deep as they could reach. Keeping the second death at bay, one inscription at a time. They were not so different from you. They just had better architecture.